Welcome to Quack&Co, the board game channel where every video is 10 minutes or less guaranteed, and today we're taking a look at Sleeping Gods Distant Skies, the sequel to the critically acclaimed Sleeping Gods. This is coming from Red Raven Game, is currently live over on Gamefound, and has already raised $520,000 at the time of filming this video, and that number is ticking up as I've been doing research and as I've been talking right now. Yeah, it just went up another 100. So there's a lot of hype and a lot of interest in this title. In this video, I'm going to break down what's new with Distant Skies, why you should and maybe shouldn't be paying attention to this game, and whether or not this is going to be one that's going to be right for you and your gaming group. This is our series where we ask the question, should you back it? So, Sleeping Gods. Let's establish the big premise while we watch this number continue to scroll. Let's establish the premise of what Sleeping Gods is. And we actually have our copy set up downstairs playing through a full campaign once again. And so I didn't want to destroy it to bring it back up, because this is a epic open world style campaign game where you're controlling a crew of different survivors and heroes, equipping gear cards, going on tactical missions, exploring the world around you, and every now and then coming in contact with various different famed creatures and beasts that you have to fight and take down. In the original Sleeping Gods, the biggest praise, the biggest celebration for the game system was the fact that it was this cooperative, open-world exploratory adventure with Ryan Laukatt's incredible artwork, amazing world building, and fantastic storytelling, where you really could sail around from island to island, exploring various different narrative puzzles with hundreds of different story arcs that you could take, and a lot of different varied endings and pathways for you to navigate through the course of the game. Distant Skies here is going to be a similar vein. With less characters to control, you'll actually be able to man this as a solo game or a solo mission a little bit more agreeably than you could the original Sleeping Gods. And along with that, instead of being awash on distant islands, instead you're going to be flying, traveling by foot or plane on the mountainous peaks region, exploring a whole new environment in the same Sleeping Gods world, but with different creatures, cultures, and missions for you to explore. As far as I can tell, this game has really iterated upon the criticism that the original Sleeping Gods game has had. Now, there is a reasonable question here. Should you go for the original, or should you just go for Distant Skies? Because Distant Skies is going to be and is currently a standalone game. It iterates upon the system. It certainly opens up the world, and anyone that loves Sleeping Gods should find everything that they loved back again here with Distant Skies, with a few major changes or adaptations. You see, some of the things that people were critical about in the original Sleeping Gods was going to be the combat system, feeling punishing and punitive without a lot of direct reward. The exploration or event system feeling a bit random and a little bit uncontrollable when it comes to zooming across the map or where you actually wanted to pop into. You see, you were sailing from page to page, and there was no real fast travel or jump abilities readily available. And then secondly was just going to be the sheer number of characters that you had to run. If you're playing a solo game or even a two-player game, you're running a potentiality of 7 total characters, which means divide that however you want. That's still a lot of people to man, crew to control, and resources to utilize. Distant Skies is changing all of that, but in minor and subtle ways that really shows that Ryan and Red Raven team have listened to the fans. Now, before we start diving into this, and we've already raised another $2,000 while talking, let me tell you a few reasons why you should not consider Distant Skies. Let's get that out of the way to start with. Well, first off, if you tried and didn't like Sleeping Gods, the original, I don't think this is going to change the script for you. Yes, there are some major changes built around the core criticisms of the original game, but it doesn't change the nature of the game. This is still going to be an exploratory game where you're controlling a crew of heroes, equipping items, building your deck, and going on narrative-driven adventures. If that doesn't sell the game for you, I don't see any reason why this one would do something so vastly or drastically different that it's a game that you'd want to sink your teeth into. Outside of that, there's a few other things to keep in mind. Sleeping Gods is going to be a cooperative adventure, and depending on how you like to enjoy your cooperative adventures, this might be a really great 1 or 2 player game for you, but for myself personally, I wouldn't want to play it at higher player counts. Yes, you can, but like a lot of other cooperative games where characters have not as substantial roles as the party does as a whole, you might find you're sitting and waiting for other characters to read their narrative, take their actions, or make their choices a lot more often than you are actually engaged in the gameplay. So for myself, Sleeping Gods is a 2-player or solo game. Now, Distant Skies is going to be a more agreeable solo game because you run 5 characters, well, 4 characters and a captain, instead of the 7 that you did in the original. But I do still have to paint that picture. If you're trying to get a game to the table with 3, 4, 5 players, I don't know that this is the right genre for you. And then the last thing is going to be, well, the sheer exploration and replayability of it. Now, it is actually a fairly highly replayable game with a vast amount of narratives and pathways to take, but you do have to keep in mind, as you play through one narrative to the next, you will see some repeat content, meaning the first play you have is going to be the most eye-opening, the most awakening. And then you'll be iterating upon that system, right? You'll still be probably encountering some of the same stories, some of the same locations, unless you're jumping the whole way across the map and doing your best to find a completely different pathway or a completely different narrative engine. Sleeping Gods does a good job at accommodating for this, but you have to keep it in mind when you're considering whether or not this is one that you're going to get to the table. It's not going to be a standalone Euro. It's going to be a campaign game. It's going to be a game that you're going to want to sit down and dive into for 30, 40, 50 hours, and then probably put away until it's refreshed again or until you have another group to go through it with. And now that we're up to 524,000 and still counting, let's go ahead and slide through this and take a look at what's happening here on the campaign page so you can diagnose it as easily as possible. We have the standalone, we have the big box, it's talking about all the stuff they're adding, they're talking about the benefit of backing now, $15 discount on top of deluxeified components, a painted miniature, foil box, and other surprises that actually have dates to them. I really like that they put when these surprises would be made available. We also have the Sleeping Gods Primeval Peril, which was originally a print and play with the original Sleeping Gods campaign. You could download it now if you wanted to test out some of these systems, and this is actually going to be made standard and available here in a box. So I'm actually very excited about this. It makes me kind of want to go print out that game that I never actually did, and dive into this other smaller style of an experience with the Sleeping Gods system. So maybe I really should. We have reviewers here nominated for 7 categories with Dice Tower. There's a lot of praise here. You have the Foreteller audio, which is not something that I use, but if you love narrative storytelling, Foreteller really does some of the best work when it comes to voiceover, along with thematic, atmospheric sound effects mixed in. So it's exciting for people that don't like reading the text aloud themselves. Continuing to scroll, we have the overview. So you're going to be exploring a massive open world. It has the flipbook style exploration. When you come to one end of the page, you'll be flipping that page back over. Here you're going to have a fast travel system, which is going to allow you to jump from faraway places so you don't have to maybe trek across the land by foot all the time. That's going to be the airplane mode, which is another of a bit of a new module that they've introduced here. We're going to have 5 core characters, less than the original, which I actually prefer because the characters will be more advanced, but the system will be less management of all of them put together. Brand new resources, a brand new combat system, and dangerous enemies. Now, you're also going to have a narrative comic book style introduction or adventure into the game, which I really appreciate. And if I slide down here, let's talk about the changes they've made. So with combat's going to be punchier. You're going to be dealing more damage. You're never going to have any misses. You don't have to spend action points to engage in combat. And you're going to be building a deck of cards with special weapons and abilities that you can use instead of utilizing the weapons that you have attached to yourself as abilities or actions. I really like the combat changes. It's going to feel a little bit more visceral. It's going to hit a little bit harder. And along with that, your enemies are going to be more dangerous because they're going to get bonus power cards that are going to supplement their abilities. So you're never going to be quite facing the same repeat creature over and over again. Flexible action system is going to give you cards that you're actually going to be playing, and you're going to be able to take this time-based action to refresh yourself or move around the board, like you did kind of with the boat, but a little bit more streamlined. Permanent abilities. Abilities won't go away for your character from character to character, which is really important in this game. You'll get stronger throughout the progression of the game. More in-depth character stories, which is incredibly exciting, and adventure cards instead of action markers that allow you to actually take the choices or take the actions that you want to take. I really like this system because it's introducing a little bit more theme and a little bit more agency to the characters that you're playing as. Finally, you're going to have new resources, and the rules are going to be supported by Rule Pop. Red Raven Games is a master at their craft. I'm insanely excited about this game, and I hope I've given you a little bit more insight into whether or not you should back Sleeping Gods. As far as I'm concerned, it's a no-brainer, but I'll leave that for you to decide. Whatever the case, remember, less time watching means more time playing, and we'll see you on the next one.